Serious Survivor here, and today I wanted to discuss surviving in the aftermath of an economic collapse, a financial crisis or meltdown, something that we did not recover from. When we really think about prepping and really think about survival, there are a lot of things that truly overlap in these all types of events. Now, the events themselves can range dramatically from an asteroid impact to Yellowstone erupting to a financial crisis. I mean, we're looking at the total opposite ends of the spectrum there. But no matter what the event, the same sets of basic skills will always overlap in these events. And these basic skills being our abilities to, make fire, our abilities to find, locate, purify water, to identify food sources, to properly prepare that, to ensure that we have shelter from the cold, to take care of our basic everyday survival needs. A lot of people do have these skills in place, and I think these skills are relatively easy to develop, at least in the initial stages of it. We can always get better at everything we do, but developing your basic skills is one of the most important aspects of survival. Without these basic skills, then I'm definitely going to be relying on someone else. And in this type of situation, you want to be able to support yourself, to take care of yourself without having to rely on anyone else. Although surviving as an individual in the aftermath of any type of catastrophic event would be extremely difficult, group survival is definitely the route that we would want to go. But there will be times that we may be forced to survive on our own for short periods of time or even extended periods of time. And that's where our basic skills come into play. But along with the basic skills, there's one very important aspect that we need to develop and we need to really think about and utilize to our advantage. And that's our minds, our intelligence. The main thing that separates humans from animals is the ability to reason and, of course, the opposing thumbs. But other than the thumbs, our ability to reason is what's given us the advantage through millennia over all the different types of animals that we have shared this planet with up until now. Most people are pretty smart. Most people are fairly intelligent. Most people can solve problems. But one key issue will prevent those in this type of event or any event, will prevent those from using this intelligence, and that's fear. Fear can overcome people. It can freeze people. Fear can absolutely paralyze someone to where they simply cannot even make a decision. And this is where we have to have control of our emotions too. We talk a lot about skills, and there's a lot of talk about gear, and gear is great. I love gear. I've got a ton of it, and I buy gear all the time when I can afford it, but that's all good. But we have to face this true reality that we may not ever even have the opportunity to use this gear, so we don't want to put too much faith in it. It's good to have things that will make my life easier. It's good to have some solar panels. It's good to have a lot of ammunition for my firearms. It's good to have 2 years supply of food. It's good to have all this stuff. But the moment I leave that primary area, I have this stuff no more. And if I don't have my basic skills taken care of, then I'm probably not going to make it on my own very long. Now, the dangers of being on your own versus the dangers of being with a group are massive, in my opinion, anyway. We hear things, people talk about lone wolf preppers, the lone survivors, the ones like that. And there are a lot of people who do perform, I guess you could say, better on their own in certain situations. Surviving from now until the end of your life alone, that's something that I don't think many people are going to want to do. I know me personally, I don't want to bug out to the mountains and stay up on some mountain cave for the rest of my life living by myself, building a fire. Without groups, there is no chance of rebuilding after society has collapsed. And for me, that's the whole goal. I began prepping pretty much when I was a young kid. Now, I'm in my late 40s now, so I've got about 40 years of survival experience, and I love, every aspect of being out in the woods, of being in any situation, especially ones that I haven't been in before, learning something new. But over this duration, over all this time, there's one thing that's really stood out to me, and that's the fact that if I try to do this alone, at some point in time, it's not going to work out for me. Seems easy. It seems that when we talk about, the lone prepper has less responsibilities. This person has less people they have to feed, less people to defend, which means simpler plans, simpler escape routes, simpler shelters, simpler everything. But on the other side of that, do you really want to be alone for the rest of your life, no matter what the situation? And we have to ask, would it be worth it at that point? Surviving isn't just about taking more breaths into my lungs. It's about living. There's no point in surviving if I'm not going to attempt to rebuild and bring back some semblance of humanity and civilization. We have progressed extremely far as a human race, and we have built things that were unimaginable 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And this technology just continues to increase at an exponential rate in today's society. With these advancements, with these devices, these designs that we have, then no matter what type of event happens, we have something that our ancestors, that any other type of species on this earth has never had through an extinction level event. We have knowledge. Even though the event may destroy electronics, we know how to rebuild them. Even though the event will stop the power, will stop the running water, we know how this is done. We know how power plants work, and we know how running water must be sterilized, or must be purified, I should say. And we know how to distribute it just through the common knowledge that we've gained through the years. But what comes next? So the event occurs, and the riots have settled, the government's no longer existent, and factions have broken off and taken control of basically each city, run by gangs, things like that. So what do we do as individuals? And this is the biggest problem that I see. With the event itself, once that ends, once the dust settles and the smoke clears, then the event is over. And now we're recovering in the aftermath. Because the biggest problem that I see with society is not enough people are willing to work together, at least not enough of the ones that really want to rebuild. We're all worried about, I'm going to take care of my own type of mentality, and that's good. I understand that completely. I'm going to take care of my own too to begin with. But my primary focus after I ensure that we are surviving is not simply going to be to keep putting food on the table for just my own for the rest of my life, but it's going to be to rebuild, and it's going to be to restore, at least partially, something of what we had. There are things that we can do as a community and work together, and we can really use the technology that's already developed to help us build a better life. When we talk about this, what I think about is if this type of event were to happen, any type of event that changes the world forever, then this is not something that I would be rebuilding for myself. I'm not looking at restoring the power and looking at restoring the running water, getting a hospital doctor's office functional so that we can treat the sick, the elderly, and the injured. I'm looking at rebuilding this for the next generation. We can't just survive in this type of event and leave it for the next generation to fix. This is something that we will have to fix so the next generation can improve upon it and make it better. And this is where our intelligence comes in. If we break off into really small groups and all play this little, I'm just going to take care of myself thing, then we're going to fall. And the groups that do band together will be the ones that bring us down. Because it seems like a lot of times that criminals and people who do harm, they're not looking for an excuse or a reason. They're simply looking for an opportunity. And when the grid goes down, when the system collapses, then the opportunity presents itself immediately. And one thing about these types of gangs and groups is they do work together. And this is where a community comes in, a networked community. I think most people will work together if they have a common goal. And the goal should be complete rebuilding, but not rebuilding the way it was. Rebuilding the way it should be, the way that the groups that are working together decide it should be to best benefit those who have survived, those who continue to survive, and those who are willing to put in the blood, the sweat, the tears to get the job done. Groups will come. And if we're too busy bickering over who's in charge, over who's going to give the orders, We need to work these kind of things out. These are the details that will cause a community to fall, that will cause it to split and causing division in the ranks. And once these communities begin to be divided like that, then sometimes there's no bringing it back together. And one of the things that really is going to be difficult for a lot of people is working with people that you normally wouldn't work with, and people that don't like you and people you don't like. But it's going to be time to put all of our differences aside and decide that we're going to rebuild and make this a better world for those who follow us instead of just surviving for ourselves. And going back to the beginning of the video, we started off by talking about economic collapse. Now, the reason that I say the economic collapse is going to be one of the most difficult to recover from, if we think about a catastrophic World War III, nuclear war, an asteroid impact, Yellowstone, polar shift, whichever way it happens, it's those types of events are going to cause mass devastation. And I don't just mean devastation, but they're going to basically eliminate a huge portion of the world's population. An economic collapse is not going to do that in the beginning. An economic collapse is going to leave the world's population intact, which means when it finally sets in and people realize the government isn't there anymore to take care of the ones who depended upon it, then that's when chaos will ensue. And that's when riots will begin. And they won't stop until cities are destroyed. And without a military in place and without police in place, then there's going to be no one to stop them except each individual at their own homes. And if you try to stop a riot by yourself, there's probably not much chance of that happening. So this once again illustrates the need for groups, for networking. Our military, the United States military, is the most powerful military in the world, and it's because we're networked. It's because we have communications and we have technology. We can put forces on the ground and send in air support, striking just a few meters, a few yards from their location, taking out the enemy, allowing those troops to advance. And that's just one simple aspect of it. You always want to know what the other groups around you are doing. And if you don't know, then that leaves you wide open to not only attack, but other situations, such as just simply being taken advantage of. What really turned me into a prepper was 2000, I guess. If anybody remembers back to that, everyone thought the computers were going to crash and we were going to go back to the dark ages. They didn't crash, as we know. But what it did teach me was that something could happen at any time, and it also taught me how reliant our civilization has become on technology, even though this has been a little while back. And at that time, we were becoming reliant. Now, we are completely reliant. Would you get paid tomorrow if there was no technology? If there were no bank transfers, no wire transfers? If there was no internet, would you be able to have access to any type of information? It would be much more difficult. The internet has taken the world by storm, and it's not going anywhere until something happens, something collapses. But once we prepare and we survive this initial event, then we have to begin preparing to survive the rest of our life in a completely changed environment and world. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helps out. And for now, Serious Survivor, out.